And so tonight, with a few gremlins, the podcast goes live for the first time. So I really want to welcome Minister Mary Butler, who is a Waterford minister with special responsibility for mental health and older people. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for that.
So who is the real Mary Butler?
Well, I was listening to you there, standing in the background, Mark, and you spoke about courage, and you spoke about public speaking, and you spoke about a lot of things, about death, about life, about your mum. And I was just thinking back to my very first time when I did an interview with the late, great Billy McCarthy, when I got involved in politics 10 years ago. And my first interview on the radio was about thatched roofs on houses, on cottages in Waterford. And to this day, I will never forget the stress and the strain and the pressure I was under. And 10 years later, I can come out here and sit down with very little nerves. And I suppose you get used to everything. And I suppose the one thing about Mary Butler is, you asked me, who is Mary Butler? First going down, I'm a mother of 3. I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm an auntie, and I'm a godmother. And I suppose I'm a person that all my life, whatever I do, I give it 100%. I didn't grow up in a political family, for example. I didn't come through one of these political dynasties. I was always involved in community. We ran a shop in Portlaw, myself and my dad, for 18 years until he passed away, and my sister came in to help then. And that was my background. My background was always working in the community and speaking to people and helping people. And I suppose the real Mary Butler is, on a Friday night, I would probably be sitting at home at the fire with my treat, which is a tub of ice cream, because I don't drink or smoke, but I loved a bit of ice cream. You probably know by looking at me. And that's where I'd be on a Friday night. It's a busy life being a politician. I'm in Dublin Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. But the weekend, especially Sundays, because it's hard to get Saturdays off. But the Mary Butler at the weekend is at home with her family. She's ironing the uniform for our youngest, who's in Leaving Cert. And I'm with my mum every Friday and Saturday night. She's 86, she lives alone. She's lucky she has 4 daughters in Portlaw, and we all look after her. And I take my turn Friday, Saturday and Sunday evenings. Now, she allowed me out tonight because she knew I was coming in here to chat to you. So that's who Mary Butler is.
Yeah, you've always struck me as somebody that was very focused on family and putting family first. I remember reading that over the last couple of years when there were various trips, to various parts of the world around St. Patrick's Day, that you were actually staying at home in Ireland. So that was really taken with that.
Yeah, I suppose I'm in national politics since 2016. So this is my 8th year. The years just fly by. And in that 8 years, I have travelled abroad 3 times. It's not a part of the job that really, that I embrace or do. But one of the best trips I ever had was 2 years ago, when I attended the World Health Organization. They held a conference in Italy, in Rome, and I represented Ireland as Minister for Mental Health and Older People, but the conference was about older people. And I was one of about 40 ministers. And, you spoke there about COVID and resilience and about supporting people to age well. And what was really unique about that conference was I was the minister that was most sought out. I was the minister that other countries wanted to speak about in relation to the social care model that we follow in Ireland, the way we support older people to age in place, to live at home, the home care, the daycare, the meals on wheels, the work we do in relation to dementia. And for example, I met the minister from the UK, and he said to me, if you could do 3 things, if you could recommend 3 things to me, what would they be? And I said, ICPOP teams. We have the most fantastic integrated care programme for older people. Mm-hmm. We have 24 teams now in Ireland. We have to get to 30. Fabulous one in Waterford, which since 2017 we got the first pilot. daycare centres, of course, and then Meals on Wheels. And I suppose what they spoke a lot about was ageism, and the fact that in Ireland we don't have ageism, thank God. And I launched a report there about 6 months ago, intergenerational report, and 86% of teenagers have the greatest respect for their grandparents and for their older members of their family, and we don't see that in other countries.
It's really interesting, you know, how all the research from Yale University would show if you've got a positive mindset about aging, you know, if you see aging as a time to acquire wisdom and new perspectives and a stronger sense of community, you can expect to live at least 7.5 years longer than someone who sees aging through a more negative mindset. So I think that's really interesting. Can I ask you, I mean, if you have special responsibility for mental health and the elderly, if you were the full Minister for Health, what's one thing you would really like your legacy to be remembered for?
Okay, so I suppose I'm going to split it in two because I have two briefs.
Okay.
So the first brief is older people, and I was the first minister ever. I'm really proud of this. I was the first minister ever to ring-fence funding for dementia. Today we opened our 50th dementia daycare centre in the country in Barcelona in County Tipperary, working with the Alzheimer's Society. 18% of all home care hours are now dementia specific, and we have memory support services and memory clinics. So I suppose from that perspective, I would like to be, you know, when my time is over as minister or even being a TD, the work I did in relation to dementia. If I was a full minister, what I would like to do, and I think this is really important, would be in relation to access for mental health supports out of hours. So say, for example, somebody has a psychotic episode tonight, or they're very mentally unwell, and they attend the emergency department. It's not the right place for them. And I was reading, Sharing the Vision is our mental health policy, and it's a policy that you couldn't read in 1 week. And I might read a different page of it every couple of days, you know. And one of the parts is at the moment that we're doing a kind of an audit of all the emergency departments around the country, because I believe when you present with mental health difficulties to the emergency department, and a lot of this time it's out of hours when your GP may not be available, that the pathway we have at the moment is not appropriate. And I would like to change that. I think when you present to the emergency department with mental health difficulties, you should be triaged, and then you should be led to a multidisciplinary team 24/7 to support you. So that's what I would do. Now we are working towards that. We're working towards, you know, we have done a lot of work in relation to lived experience. We have 30 peer support workers. We have 11 family peer support workers. But I suppose it's one of the things I often talk about. It's the postcode lottery. Now, we have a new crisis resolution team set up in Waterford, set up since September. They're finding their feet. And at the moment, it's only referrals from GPs. But that will change in time in the next 6 months or so. And they will be able to support people with mental health distress out of hours. So that's what I would like to see. And that's what I would like to achieve. But I'm going to push at it as a junior minister.
Good on you. I think there's two really interesting things about health. I was reading recently that in the last 50 years, the life expectancy in Ireland has increased from 71 to 82. I think that's really, really positive. And then looking down the track, if you look at what's going to happen over the next 25, 30 years, if you look at how our population is aging and the impact that may have on, you know, dementia cases and so on, and why right now we need to really be focusing on more holistic health and focusing on well-being and encouraging people as best they can to stay healthy in their own communities.
I'm really proud of the fact that we have the highest life expectancy in Europe as deemed by the World Health Organization. That didn't happen by accident. That's the like of you in general practice every day. It's the like of our primary care centres. It's the like of all the good work that's been done. You know, as I said already, the triangle of supports that we provide. Ireland was also the first country in the world to get age-friendly status from the World Health Organization. And again, I suppose that's, you know, bringing it back to the type of lifestyles we have. And people are aging, but that's something we have to embrace. And, you know, I'm glad, for example, like one of the biggest issues we have at the moment, we can't get enough of bus drivers. but you can't work as a bus driver for Bus Éireann if you're 70 or over, whereas you can work for a private company. And I just think we're living longer, but we're healthier as we live longer, and that's something we have to embrace. And so many older people have so much to give. Like, they built our country.
Absolutely.
And they have so much to give back. And I just think, I'm just so thankful. Sometimes people do experience ageism, but we're not an ageist country. And the majority of people in Ireland, as I said, embrace older people. But I think Ireland is a great country to live in. It's a great country to grow old in. Notwithstanding, there's a lot of challenges. I'm not pretending we're living in euphoria. There are a lot of challenges. But for a lot of people, they can live, a really healthy life. And I have to say, for example, when you look at our active retirement groups, our men's sheds, we have actually more men's sheds per head of population than any other country in the world. A men's shed started in Australia. And being involved in your community, whether it's with your Tidy Towns organisation or your men's shed or your active retirement group. I've one of the active retirement groups from Waterford coming up to visit Leinster House next Wednesday, and they're really looking forward to it. And for some people, I suppose, what we have found since COVID, there are some people who have found it, you'll see this in your own practice, they have found it hard to reconnect, and there's a huge amount of loneliness out there.
Well, you're so right, and there's two interesting things about loneliness. Firstly, scans of the brain have shown that loneliness lights up the same brain areas as physical pain. So it is like experiencing physical pain to be lonely, and it is probably the real pandemic. And secondly, people can have this hypervigilance to social threats. So even if you feel lonely and disconnected, it's hard to get back out there. And I think you're right. I think the more we can do to promote community integration through things like the men's sheds and building healthier communities, the better. I just want to move back a little bit. If you were looking back towards your younger, say 21-year-old self, what advice might you give her?
Well, I suppose I better not say get married at 21, because my husband is in the audience and we're married 35 years and we got married when I was 21 and he was 21 as well, so I better not say that. But what I would say to and it was a different time in the 80s, we got married in 1988. What I would say to people is I only got involved in national politics in my 40s, and my youngest at the time was 7, he's now 18. And what I would say is, like, the world is your oyster at 21. It's very hard to know what you want as a career. At 21, a lot of our 21-year-olds are in college maybe 2 or 3 years. They're still not sure. They're doing a degree. They might decide to do a master's. They might decide to travel. It's very, very hard. Don't beat yourself up if you don't know at 21 what you want to do. I never would have thought that, through my 30s, I had been often asked by my own political party, would I consider running for the local authority? Would I consider running for the council? And I had said, no, the kids are too young. But I never would have thought in my 40s that I would have stepped into national politics. I would never have thought in my 50s I would be a minister of state in the Department of Health with a budget of 3.9 billion. I would never have thought that. And what I would say is, reach for your dreams. Because you can, and don't be too hard on yourself.
I think that's great advice, to reach for your dreams and to quieten your inner critic. And when I was reading your bio earlier, I was reminded of the fact that you're vice president of the Fianna Fáil party here in Ireland, which I think is a wonderful achievement as a Waterford person and as a woman.
I'm really proud of that fact. And for somebody who probably mightn't be involved in a political party or mightn't be involved in my political party, they might say it mightn't mean anything to them. I've been a member of Fianna Fáil for 35 years. I suppose I grew up in a house where Fianna Fáil was our party. And one of the best days, I would say, in my political career was, I suppose, firstly, in 2016, when the people of Waterford voted for me and I topped the poll. In 2020, they voted for me again and I was appointed as minister. But for me, being vice president of a party that's almost 100 years old, and you're voted for by the members of the party. And, the first vote was during COVID, and it was an online vote, and I was delighted that the Ort Corla, which is the governing body, supported me. And last year I was re-elected as vice president of the party, and I am really, really proud of that. But I do think also the fact that I'm the first female minister ever from Waterford. We haven't had a lot of women politicians, TDs, 4 in the history of the state, 2 of them back in the early 30s, and then in 2011, Ciara Conway from Dungarvan was the 3rd, and then I became the 4th in 2016.
And how do we change that? Because for me, I mean, I would think that more women in politics is a good idea.
You have to have more women in politics. 51% of the population are female, and it's very important that you have women's voices. So in the last 3 years working with Minister Donnelly, we've made huge strides in relation to women's health, in relation to period poverty, in relation to menopause, into see and treat gynae clinics, things like that that people were afraid to speak about previously. And I think we have to thank Joe Duffy as well for all the talk in relation to the menopause. But I think having female ministers at the table and in different departments, you bring a different perspective as well. And, you know, for a long, long time, it has been difficult for women to get into politics. And I suppose a lot of research has been done on that, because sometimes it was very hard to break into politics, to come through a political dynasty of a family, regardless of what party it is. Sometimes then it was very difficult. It's very difficult in relation to childcare. Like, I go to Dublin on a Tuesday morning, I'm gone at 8 o'clock, and I come home on a Thursday night. That's my work in Dublin as a Minister of State, and being in the Dáil for those 3 days. Mondays, Fridays and Saturdays are constituency, and then it's, you know, it's all the work that you do normal. It's a busy job.
Non-stop.
It's non-stop. And you need to be dedicated. But most politicians, I find, are very, very dedicated. But it is more difficult for women. And I remember there were about 3 Saturdays ago, I went up to do the Column of Mungo show on Saturday at 1. And I left at 10 o'clock, and there was a crash on the M50, and I didn't actually get to the RTE studio until 1 o'clock. And the programme was an hour long, and then I didn't get home until 5. And I remember one of the politicians who was on the programme, who lives in Dublin, saying to me, God, I never realised, he said, the rural TDs, how much time, because my whole Saturday was gone. And I remember him saying, God, I'm so lucky I live so close to Leinster House, and I didn't have to, I didn't have to lose a full day to be on a programme on a Saturday. And I suppose it is very, very difficult, I think, for parents of young children. The type of, the hours that you keep as a politician. And like Tuesday, for example, we don't start until 2 o'clock. And I guarantee you I'm there at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, because when you're Minister of State in the Department of Health, you always draw the short straw as well. And you're always going to be answering the health questions late at night. It's just the way it works. And we don't start until 2. And the reason we don't start until 2 is because the Cabinet sits on a Tuesday morning. But there's no reason, I think, why you couldn't start at 10 and you could be out of there by 8 or 9 o'clock. But it's just the system, and that's the way it works. So it is quite difficult for women. And one of the other areas that has been very, very difficult, and women politics, and especially women politicians in local government and those at national level, we get horrendous abuse. On social media. Like, I mean horrendous abuse.
I was going to ask you about social media, the impact of that in your job and in your life.
I suppose it has been very, very difficult for me. I get a lot of abuse on social media, but it's funny, you actually get used to it, and you shouldn't. You should never have to get used to being abused and that you think it's okay.
It's never nice.
No, it's not nice, but at the same time, in the main, people are very, very good. And it's easy to be a keyboard warrior. It's easy to be a keyboard warrior late at night. When you decide. I'll always remember one time, I wasn't long in the job. And I was inexperienced, I suppose, and I was just trying to get used to it. And it was a Christmas Eve, and we had come back as a family from Mass in Portlaw on Christmas Eve. And I got the most horrible message at 11 o'clock on a Christmas Eve to say this person, that I was a disaster, I wasn't doing anything for Waterford, and they would take great pleasure in making sure that I never got re-elected again. And I'll always remember thinking, it was one of the ones that always stood out for me, and I always remember thinking, that poor person must be so sad or lonely. on Christmas Eve at 11 o'clock, all he can think to do is send. Now, that wasn't abuse. That was just a message that he wanted me to have on Facebook, a personal message that was sent to me. And it always stuck in my mind that that poor person themselves must be in distress if they felt that the only person they could reach out to in a negative way was me on that particular night. But politics has changed, and social media is a huge part of politics. And if you speak to colleagues that are in the Dáil 20, 30 or 40 years, people expect a response instantly now, and that's not always possible. Whereas before, you might have got the letter in the post, or you might, you get the email. Faxes, for example, were the way, but it has changed completely. And what I would hate to see happening because of the abuse that has entered into politics, I'd hate to see politicians not being accessible to their constituents, because that's one of the things that we do very well in Ireland, that you are accessible to your constituents. But that has been quite difficult for me in the last 6 months. I've had several incidents, and I spoke about it previously, having a death threat on me.
Oh my God.
During the summer. I didn't take it personally. I took it as I'm the Minister for Mental Health, and the person who wrote it was very, very ill. And it was referred to the Gardaí.
Must have been very hard for your family, though.
It was hard for my family. It was hard for my family, and I have to say, the Gardaí in Waterford were absolutely outstanding. They were absolutely brilliant. They decided to take it very, very seriously, the way it was written. But it had gone to the stage that it was recommended to me that I do not go anywhere on my own. And at that time, and I didn't go anywhere on my own, which is sad. But at the same time, that has now passed, and I'm not afraid to go anywhere on my own per se. But at the same time, when I go to work in Leinster House on a Tuesday, I do not go anywhere on my own. So I don't go out the gates. Previously, we might ramble down the street at lunchtime, or even go out for a walk in the evening. I don't do that because politics has changed, and I would be nervous to do that.
And that must be tough on your family as well.
It is tough on the family. It is tough on the family. Of course it is. They feel it. But I'm the type of person, I try to hide that. I don't let it show. There's a lot of things happen that you put on the brave face and you tuck it away. I chose this life. I chose to be a politician. I am so honoured to represent Waterford in Leinster House, in the Dáil. There's only 160 people representing their country, and I'm one of them. And there's very few women. I'm not sure the percentage. There's only about 30 of us in Leinster House, and in the 33rd Dáil. And it's an honour of a lifetime. That and sometimes the weeks just drift, and before you know it, it's hard to believe we're into November already. But any day, when I walk into Leinster House and I walk along the corridors and the ushers say to me, "Morning, Minister, how are you?" I just smile to myself and say, this is a great honour, and this won't last forever. So try and enjoy it while you can. But it is a very, very busy brief. Working in any department is busy, but working in the Department of Health is extremely busy.
You strike me as a very grateful person.
A very which?
Grateful.
I suppose I am. Look, I've worked all my life. I suppose we were always reared as a family. We always had part-time jobs as kids. We all worked hard to find our own way in life. My dad, who was a huge influence on me, he's dead now 28 years, and he died back in 1995. And I worked with my dad in the family business for 10 years, and he always had great words of wisdom. And I suppose, we were always reared that, you work for what you have. And I always remember as children, my dad was one of the founding members of the Portlaw Credit Union. And he said to us, if you save, he opened accounts for us all. So if you save, whatever you save, I'll match it. Now, it wasn't that my dad had a lot of money. Dad was working in Clover Meats at the time. There was 5 of us in the house. My mum was a stay-at-home mum. But if we managed to save 5 pence at the time, he'd match the 5 pence. And, so in fairness to him, he didn't have to match it very often because there wasn't a lot of money going around. But if we got money for our birthday or if we got money at Christmas, he used to always say, I'll match that for you. And I suppose he taught us all the value of saving and sparing up money so that if you wanted to buy something. And, you know, I always think we were very, very lucky. We had a great childhood. We had a really, really good childhood. My dad came from West Cork in 1954 to Portlaw to work on a farm in Portlaw. His sister had come the year previously in 1953 to work in Portlaw in a shop, Fogarty's shop now. And I suppose it was just, you know, the whole ethos around our upbringing was in relation to family. My dad was a Cork man. He just loved Cork hurling. He just loved sport, as I do. And and of course the political influence was there, and in fairness, there was a religious influence there as well. And that's the kind of rearing we had, and I'm very, very thankful and grateful for it.
What does spirituality mean to you now?
It still means a huge amount to me. Like I suppose when I was before I became a politician, I would have been on the board of management of the school for 10 years. I would have been involved with the parish council, the parish committee. I'd read at Mass, collect the money at Mass, all of that. Now I don't have time. But for me, my faith is very, very important to me. That doesn't mean that I get to Mass every single week, but I do get to Mass regularly. But it mightn't always be on the Saturday or the Sunday. But I love churches. We went to Malta on holidays this year, the family, the five of us and my eldest son's partner. And I just love cathedrals. I just love churches. I love the stained glass windows. That's my time. I absolutely love that. But what I really love is, and I was listening to an article today about the Latin Mass. I love choirs. So I sang in the choir in Portlaw for years with my mother and my sister. I love the Latin hymns, and I just find it for me, it's a lovely time for me. I just find it so relaxing.
We were in Malta as well a few years ago, the beautiful Caravaggio.
Oh, yeah.
In that cathedral.
In that cathedral, yeah. Fantastic.
So it seems to me that spirituality for you means peace, calm, stillness.
Yeah, and you know, I'm one of these people. I do pray. About 2 months ago, myself and Mum went up to Mount Melleray. I love going to Mount Melleray. I just love it. Might only go there once a year, but I love going up to Mount Melleray, up to get some holy water. Fantastic cafe up there now. And, you know, the monks have done a great job because they're trying to make it, I suppose, more financially viable. So they're encouraging more and more people to come. But I do, like, you know, I always think it's funny. My dad died in 1995, and I'll always remember we were in the Mercy Hospital in Cork. He had a brain tumour, diagnosed at 51, and he was sick for 6 months. He gave 5 months in CUH and the Mercy, and his last 3 weeks in University Hospital Waterford. And I'll always remember we had got really bad news about Dad, and I was walking a corridor outside the hospital ward. He was in a ward, I remember, there was 7 other men in there. And I was walking and I was crying and I was kind of ranting, and I met the priest that was associated with the Mercy Hospital Cork. And I remember ranting to him saying, why is God doing this to us? And he said, when your back is to the wall, there's nowhere else to turn. And I think of that every day. I think of that every day when your back is to the wall, and whether it's a quick prayer or a quiet prayer that you say. And funnily enough, when I'm in Leinster House and I'm sitting at the desk and I have the computer there and there's books and papers everywhere, but there's also the picture of my dad just there. And I get lots of gifts of different things like miraculous medals and rosary beads. People send them to me, and, you know, different little things. And I have the miraculous medals all stuck around the frame. And anytime I'm going down to the Dáil to speak, just take a look at Dad before I go down, and I know he'll look after me.
He's still with you?
Every day. I talk about him every single day. There's not a day I don't remember his words of wisdom. And after 28 years, it's lovely to be able to say that.
It certainly is. How do you stay healthy yourself, Mary? You know, in terms of, I mean, obviously you have a very busy, very stressful job. How do you look after yourself?
probably don't look after myself well enough. I probably don't walk as much as I should. I used to be very good at the walking. I love pottering around in the garden, not the grass or anything now, or not the weeds, but I love, we have a deck area outside the back of the house. I love planting. I love planting my pots. I love weeding them. I love that. I could spend hours out there watering the plants. We have a lovely dog in the family. Ozzy is his name. We have him 18 months, and we never were reared with animals because my dad was bitten as a child, and we never had an animal as grown up. None of us as children. And about 2 years ago, our youngest was looking for a dog the whole time. So we got this lovely dog, and a Springer Spaniel, and love going for a walk with the dog. But now he drags me along. But it is really important to be as healthy as you possibly can. But believe it or not, and I have one of those smartwatches. Leinster House is such a big campus that when you're going around all day long and you're going to different meetings and you're going down to the committees and you're going across, and I'm in government buildings as against Leinster House, you'd easily rack up the 7,000 or 8,000 steps every day when you're going around without even realising it. But you do have to make time for yourself. And where I make time for myself is going out the back, out the garden. I have to say I do like sleep. I do like sleep. So Saturday afternoon, when I'm wrecked tired, I love a couple of hours sleep Saturday afternoon. I love a couple of hours sleep Sunday afternoon. And I always find you're really tired and you don't dream. And I do find that for me works really, really well too. And I have to say, I love going off to bed for a couple of hours with a bag of Maltesers. They always spoil me. They always make sure there's Maltesers in the house. And I love that relaxing couple of hours. And that's my routine kind of Saturday and Sunday evening. And I get up and we'd have the dinner and then I go up to my mum's. It's simple. You know what I mean? My husband would often say to me, we'd go out for a meal, and I'd say, oh, no, I'm tired of eating out, because when you're up in Leinster House, you're eating in the canteen or in the dining room. I'm just so happy to be at home.
Well, they say simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And if you want to be happy for a lifetime, plant a garden. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying. Could you give our listeners 3 take-homes for a resilient mind?
Well, I think to be as resilient as you possibly can is, I live each day one day at a time. So last year I was diagnosed with skin cancer. And it's funny the way it happened. I was actually away in Brussels. One of the 3 times I travelled, I was in Brussels for St. Patrick's Day. I didn't travel this year. And we were down in the Grand Place, which is the square there, and there's a mannequin piece. There's this little statue there that they had dressed up for St. Patrick's Day, and the little statue, the mannequin piece, he's peeing into the fountain. And as we were standing there, there was loads and loads of Irish people there. I was speaking to one girl, she had twins, and they were only 1, and she was feeling so lonely not to be at home for St. Patrick's Day. And we were there chatting away for about 10 minutes, and then another group of ladies came up. And one woman was from Wexford and her sister was from America, and they were on holidays and they came up to say hello. And about 3 minutes later, the woman from Wexford doubled back and she said to me, Mary, I'm sorry to have to say this to you. She recognised me. I'm sorry to have to say this to you, but my sister is a consultant, and you probably know this already. She said, you have a BCC, a basal cell carcinoma on your face, and you need to get it sorted. And I remember I was standing with the Irish ambassador to Brussels, and I just kind of pulled myself together. And we were finished, and we went back. And sure, what did I do? Go on Google straight away. What else do you do? Went on Google and looked it up and rang home, and it was cancer. And it was like a spot on the top of my nose that I had for a couple of years. Thought it was the glasses, when I was wearing glasses, were causing it. Thought it was the masks were irritating it during COVID. Had it checked out a couple of times, and it hadn't been anything, too worrisome. But it was cancer, and it was a kind of a rodent type of cancer that had burrowed right down. So I had to have 2 procedures last year. And it was this time last year, actually, that I had the second procedure and I got the all clear, and I'm so thankful for that. And I suppose I diverted, but the point I'm trying to make is I take one day at a time. I'm a real believer in taking one day at a time. I don't really worry about what's on the diary for next week. I'll look at that on Sunday and I'll decide what I have to do for next week. So what I would say to people is, like, don't beat yourself up. If you can't do everything today, there's always tomorrow. That's the first point. I'm a real believer. I say this to people I meet the whole time. Take each day as it comes, because, you know, there won't always be a tomorrow. And I always say to people, you know, try and live the best life you possibly can. Now, that's not always possible, and it's only words. But for me, I suppose the older I got, and the fact, and, you know, my husband, Mick, he's here, and as I said, we're married 35 years, but he also was diagnosed with prostate cancer during COVID. And he, you know, thankfully has made a full recovery as well, but that knocks you back. There's no doubt about it. You're going through life, you're getting up, you're going to work. You know, you're doing all the normal things, you're paying your mortgage, you're looking after your family, you're making sure they're getting through college or school or whatever, and then you get thrown these curveballs. And my daughter Jane is in the audience as well, and I remember when I got the all clear and Michael had got the all clear, albeit he has to have blood tests every 6 months and gets checked out, and she said, the two of you have had cancer now, that's it, I don't want to hear the word ever again. And I said, fine, we don't want to hear it either. But, you know, I suppose what I find what happens is sometimes people think politicians are machines, and we're not. We're far from it.
Absolutely.
We're ordinary people that chose to put your face on a poster. You decide that you want to try and do the best you possibly can. And, you know, I suppose sometimes people don't realise that even though we're all different parties, like all of us politicians in Waterford work really well together. When there's a big issue for Waterford, we come together and we do our best to get it over the line, because 4 or 5 voices are always going to be stronger than one. And, you know, like I would speak to all my colleagues from Waterford, regardless of what party they are or whether they're independent. We would speak every single week, and we would always be speaking about Waterford issues.
Well, as I say, we're all better together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are all better together. But I suppose what struck me, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, HCCI, Health and Community Care Ireland, and they represent the private providers of home care. And there was a lady on the panel, and she was speaking about home care, and she was speaking about her lived experience, and it was recommended to her that her husband should be put into a nursing home, and she didn't want it. And I was really struck by what she said, because there was the commissioner for the aged from New York was on the panel with me as well. And she turned around and she said, and ye as politicians, remember, ye'll grow old too. And I just thought, you have no idea. I had been with my mother the night before, who had been unwell. I had been up with her for several hours looking after her. And just because you choose to be a politician doesn't mean you don't have all the other worries and all the other challenges and all the other ups and downs and highs and lows that every other person has in the world. And I suppose sometimes I feel that's kind of sometimes people don't actually realise what the true Mary Butler is. And maybe by me talking to you tonight, some people might listen and they might say, she's not as bad as she sounds.
And finally, Mary, for you, what's the meaning of life?
The meaning for life for me is what I do every day, getting up, being as happy and healthy as I possibly can. I really believe there is an afterlife. I have no fear of dying. I know when that time comes, Dad will be waiting for me, and other family members, my grandparents and others that have went ahead of me. It's funny, from the day my dad died, I have no fear of dying. And I do believe myself that there is an afterlife, and I do believe we'll all be reunited again. And some people might say, you know, that's kind of a simplistic approach, but for me it's very important. And, you know, I just think we've only one shot at this life, and enjoy it as best you can. Make the most of every single day and try not to worry too much about tomorrow. And, you know, people might say, well, look, I don't even know whether I'll be able to pay the ESB bill tomorrow, or I don't know whether I'll be able to put diesel in the car. And people are really, really challenged, and they say, it's easy for you to sit there, you know, you earn a good wage from the government. And, you know, people often say that to me. But we've all come through our ups and downs. Like, I remember the time when I had the two lads in college at the same time. I was running for the Dáil for the very first time. I remember our car was just banjaxed. We just were challenged trying to sort out the car. And I remember saying to my husband, how are we going to get through this? And he said, look, if it's beans on toast, he said, we won't go hungry. And, you know, I suppose for me, the meaning of life is trying to have as happy and healthy a home life that you possibly can. Because you know this from your work as well. When you have children that might be challenged, or when children mightn't be well, and I work with an awful lot of this in mental health, when you have that stable family life, you will have a better outcome. Mm-hmm. There's always a possibility that things can work out once you have the support. I'm really lucky that I have a lot of really good family support as a politician, because you do need that. But I suppose you also say to me, what is the meaning of life? And I do a lot of work in relation to people who are bereaved by suicide. Mm-hmm. And I suppose I was really struck by recently I won't say we marked in September, it was World Suicide Day, and I suppose to finish up, the three key words at that time were: reach out if you need help, mm-hmm. reach in for that help, and share the light.
Well, Mary, it's been wonderful having you in the doctor's chair. Keep leading, keep inspiring, and keeping your purpose one day at a time.
Thank you very much,
Butler.
Mark, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hang on. Here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Mary Butler.
Thank you very much. Oh, I forgot the photograph. Thank you very much for that.
See you after the break. So thanks for coming back. Touch and go there for a few minutes. So just a few takeaways from me from that conversation with Mary. You know, the importance of following your dreams, being true to yourself and your own values, family first, and living life one day at a time. So I'd like you all now for a minute just to think back in your lives to some time in the past when you felt really good in yourself. Might have been some prize you won, county final you won, some professional accomplishment, something that made you feel really proud. Well, that's how I felt too, you know, almost 25 years ago when we started our GP practice. We rented a space over a shop across the road from where my parents still lived. And we decked that place out really well. You know, we'd bright blue paint on the waiting room walls. We even had a coffee machine back then. Pre-millennium now, that was something. And, you know, we worked hard and the practice grew. And everything was going kind of according to plan. Everything was going well, really well. Until that Friday morning, almost a year later, in February, about 7 o'clock, there was this loud, aggressive knock on my front door. Put on my pajamas and I rushed downstairs, opened the door. There was a guard standing there. He said, "Is your name Mark Rowe, the doctor?" I said, yes, why? He said, you better come quick. Your practice is on fire. And it was like time stood still then. I remember getting dressed, rushing over there. The fire brigade had already done their thing, smoke billowing. Neighbours were standing around. Blaz, morning newspaper. But all I could see was my livelihood, my future, everything I'd worked so hard for, going up in smoke in front of my eyes. And I felt numb. Remember, a few hours later, we were allowed to enter the premises. And as I climbed the stairs, I'll never forget the smell. Kind of a pungent stench of smoke and charred wood, and got to the top of the stairs, and there was what looked like the remains of a red party balloon on the wall. Said to myself, what's that doing there? Till I realised it was what was the remains of the fire extinguisher. The computers were all melted. The waiting room was like a grim Stone Age wreck. The place was trashed. Well, we were doctors. Show must go on. So we worked through the weekend. We were open the following Monday morning across the road. But my show didn't go on, not really. I couldn't help taking that fire so personally. CCTV footage had shown that 2 guys wearing balaclavas had broken in. 4 separate fires were set deliberately. This was no electrical fault. This was arson. And I was consumed with feelings of fear. Were they, whoever they were, going to come to my house next? I felt anxious. Couldn't sleep for weeks. Until one day I realized I had a choice. I could keep on feeling sorry for myself. I could keep on wallowing in my negativity. But I wasn't going to turn back the clock. And that's when I chose to let go of the fire, to let go of the need to know why or who, to accept what had happened and to move on. Today I can look back on that fire and I can put my hand to my heart and honestly tell you, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. It's taught me so much about guts, about graft, about real resilience. Thing is, we all face fires in our lives. Fires in our health, fires in our finances, fires in our relationships. We all experience pain. We all suffer. But the fires in our lives can become sparks of opportunity to grow. And that's my hope for you too. That you embrace the fires in your life and they become sparks of opportunity for you to become wiser, stronger, and better. And if you want to be able to do that, you need to take good care of yourself. So, first thing I want to say is I'm biased. I'm a medical doctor. I'm grounded in science. I believe health is the greatest gift any of us has. It's the crown on the well person's head that sometimes only the sick person can see. Aristotle said the most important relationship any of us have in life is the relationship we have with ourselves. Now, we know that taking good care of yourself can reverse and prevent many chronic health conditions. Taking good care of yourself can add life to your years. We call it health span, the number of years you stay healthy for. And with a little bit of good luck, might increase your lifespan as well. But we also know that taking good care of ourselves is something that many people take for granted. Unless or until something happens, when you'll spend every hour of every day trying to get your health back. I love this idea of the golden rule. Treat other people as you'd like to be treated. Keep your word, keep your commitments. Be the person you'd like to spend more time with. Because somehow when you seek to reach out and find the best in others, it tends to come back to yourself. Really, it's a really smart idea. It goes back for centuries. But I think there's a little bit of it missing. And I think the bit that's missing is the bit that says to also treat yourself as you'd like others to treat you. Treat yourself as you'd like others to treat you. In other words, I'll take care of me for you, so you'll take care of you for me. I'll take care of me for you, so you'll take care of you for me. Because self-care is not some narcissistic, self-centered form of entitlement. It's a basic necessity of life. It's a gift to you and everyone that matters. And I'm not talking about the illusion of indispensability. This is something that a lot of men fall victim to. The idea that they're bulletproof, the idea that they're invincible. None of us is invincible. We are all irreplaceable to the people that love us and to the people that care about us. Self-care is not about being perfect. There's this lovely Japanese term called wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi. The crack in the vase, the blemish in the painting, the asymmetry in the drawing that adds to, as opposed to takes from, the intrinsic beauty of something. Great metaphor for us as human beings. But in Japan, they don't paper over the cracks. They don't hide the cracked china away, never to be seen again. They paint it with gold paint to celebrate the crack, to celebrate the flaws. See, I'm flawed. I don't have enough time tonight to tell you about all my flaws. And you're flawed too. We all are, because we're all human. We can all become more perfect in our imperfections. Because self-care is about listening more to your heart, living more by your values, letting your lifestyle habits be your best possible medicine. Perhaps the best words I've ever read about self-care were written by the Nobel Prize winning poet Derek Walcott, who wrote Love After Love. The day will come when with elation you will greet yourself arriving in your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was once yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the old photographs from the mantelpiece, the letters, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. One of the really exciting things about self-care is that you can choose. You can choose a stronger, more energetic body, a calmer, more reflective mind, a loving, more compassionate heart, grateful, more serene spirit. You can choose to become a more active participant in your own well-being. You can choose courage over fear, calm over anxiety, self-care over self-neglect, hope over despair, serenity over stress. If only it was that easy. It's not easy to take good care of yourself. We live in a world where there's so much stress, so much stuff going on. From the cost of living crisis to global conflict, climate anxiety. Many of us are suffering from toxic stress. And toxic stress means you're producing all these stress hormones that burn a hole in your willpower muscle. And instead of self-care, you start practicing self-sabotage. Because your brain craves comfort from all the stress. Or maybe you move back into your shell and withdraw. One of the paradoxes, of course, of self-care is people that can be so good at looking after everyone else can be so poor at taking good care of themselves. Caring can be incredibly wearing. So if you want to take really good care of yourself, and I hope you do, here's a few ideas to consider. Self-care starts with the quality of your interpersonal relationships. The Harvard study of adult development has shown that the leading indicator of your well-being long-term is your friendships, is your key relationships. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, but absence can also make the heart grow weaker. Loneliness can be the most terrible poverty. So reaching out to connect with someone else. It benefits others and yourself. This concept of lifestyle as medicine means that your lifestyle habits each and every day can make a really big difference. Not just your long-term health, but your everyday lived experience. So let me just give you 3 examples of this concept of lifestyle as medicine. Firstly, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Imagine if that was true. I often think about that. What would the world be like? I think we're a long way from that. But the reality is the bugs in our gut, the trillions and trillions of microorganisms in our gut, impact how we think, how we feel, how we act, and how we behave, influencing our immune system and inflammation. The food we eat can have such an impact. They believe now that 80% of heart disease can be prevented through lifestyle habits. The majority of type 2 diabetes can be prevented through lifestyle habits. Secondly, be stronger to live longer. Certainly be stronger to live better longer. The interesting thing about lifting weights and staying strong is that when you lift weights, your muscles release myokines. Those myokines cross the blood-brain barrier, they go into your brain, they boost serotonin production by as much as that you get from antidepressant medication or talk therapy. So a massive boost in serotonin, making you feel more self-confident, feel more positive. It releases BDNF, which builds a stronger, more resilient, more agile brain. It increases the pain threshold. And downstairs in the body, it increases the number of Duracell batteries in your cells, things called mitochondria, increasing your capacity for energy and vitality. So here's a little thought for you. If you want to go through an airport on your own at 90 years of age and carry your own bag, going for your week in the sun, and I hope you do, you need a strong body to support you. And lifting weights 2 or 3 times a week It's something that your future self, I think, will really thank you for. And thirdly, I want to talk about optimism. I call optimism the oxygen for opportunity in life. Not blind delusional optimism, but realistic optimism. See, optimists don't take things personally. Optimists know that bad times don't last forever. And they don't overgeneralize their problems. When you choose to see the world through a more optimistic lens, the Journal of the American Medical Association has shown that you will reduce your risk of heart disease by a whopping 35%. That's the first real evidence of that really strong connection between your mind and your body. Sometimes people think that self-care and lifestyle is all about a long list of to-dos, but often it's about subtraction. It's about the things you choose not to do. Perhaps choosing not to bring your phone to bed. Perhaps choosing not to beat yourself up so much with your merry-go-mind of anxious negative thoughts. Perhaps it's choosing to be kinder to yourself. It's all about simplicity. It really is the ultimate sophistication. And just committing 15 minutes a day to your own self-care. 1% of your day is 15 minutes. 15 minutes to develop yourself. 15 minutes for your mental health. 15 minutes for your relationships. 15 minutes for your physical strength. Over time, it can make all the difference. And of course, self-care starts on the inside with awareness and self-compassion. Self-awareness means tuning inwards to your own heart and mind before turning your attention to the world around you. As William Blake once wrote, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. And mindful self-compassion means accepting that to experience fear and anxiety and sadness and shame and guilt, anger, resentment. These emotions are all part and parcel of being human. We're all hardwired for fear and for survival. But with self-compassion, we become more curious about where these emotions are coming from. We don't beat ourselves up for experiencing them. Self-compassion means recognizing how far you've come in life. Not just your achievements, but the adversity you've overcome too. All the things you've done so far that got you right here tonight. Self-compassion is all about giving yourself some kudos. Being kind to yourself. Treating yourself as you treat your own best friend. Imagine if your best friend came up to you with a problem. What would you do? I'm sure you'd offer kindness and care and empathy and support, non-judgment. But self-compassion means you treat yourself the same way you treat your own best friend. Understanding that you're not a machine, that you're a human being. Determined by not what happens, but by how you respond and by who you are. That other people's opinion of you are just their opinions. And when you choose to live through the world of mindful self-compassion, not only will you become more self-aware and emotionally more agile, less reactive and more responsive, you'll experience less stress, less anxiety, you'll boost your mood, you'll build resilience and overall life satisfaction. When you were born, everyone remember the day they were born? I don't either. When you were born as a beautiful baby, because we're all so beautiful when we were born as babies, and we still are, you took your first breath. And the last thing we all do before we leave this world is we take our final breath. I mean, breathing is so fundamental to life itself. Breathe in, you breathe all this oxygen and good stuff into your cells. Breathe out and you clear out all those waste products like carbon dioxide. Every minute you breathe, perhaps 15 times a minute. And it's a subconscious brain activity. I bet you aren't even thinking about breathing until I just mentioned it. Now you can't stop thinking about it. Wonder will I count? But the interesting thing is this. If you choose to slow down your breathing to 4 or 5 breaths, not for the rest of your life, but just for 1 minute or 2, you dampen down the stress response in your brain. You quieten the red button, the amygdala. You release less stress hormones. You feel less irritated, less stressed, less reactive. You ground yourself in presence and attentive awareness. You become more focused and less distracted. You increase your heart rate variability. Normally when you breathe in, your heart rate goes up slightly. When you breathe out, it goes down slightly. The gap between them is called heart rate variability. So when you slow your breathing, you increase that gap. Brings more sort of balance to your nervous system. That's thought to be very good for your long-term heart health and well-being. When you slow down your breathing, you build that sense of inner connection, a sort of bridge between mind and body, between heart and brain. And you build a stronger connection with the world around you. The word inspiration comes from inspira. I breathe in my purpose. I breathe in the essence of who I am. So I'd like us all to slow down our breathing now for a minute or two. I have a mindful breathing technique called pause. A few years ago, I got to go to a course in Harvard. And I met this brilliant doctor called Herbert Benson, he's the modern guru of mind-body medicine. It was such a radical idea in the 1950s, he'd carry out his experiments at night, or he would have been kicked out of Harvard. And he's since shown that slowing down your breathing can lower rates of all sorts of stress-related illnesses, can reduce attendances at A&E departments. And it's as simple as focusing on your breath. So my pause technique is a mnemonic for pause. P. Just take a pause for a moment. A. Just become aware of how you're feeling right now in this moment. You might be feeling relaxed. You might be feeling tense. Just tune into that feeling. And you is understanding. Understanding that you are separate from any emotion you're feeling. Think of the river of life flowing in front of you. You're back from that. You're the observer of all you observe. You're separate from your emotions. And then S, you simply breathe from the tip of your nose to the bottom of your lungs, all the way in. You take a tiny pause. As T.S. Eliot said, like the still point of the turning world. And then you breathe out, you exhale. And as you exhale out, you clear out all the tension, all the noise, all the worry. You let it all go. So I'm going to invite you all now to just close your eyes as we focus on our breath. And as I breathe in courage, I breathe out fear. As I breathe in calm, I breathe out anxiety. As I breathe in presence, I breathe out distraction. As I breathe in compassion, I breathe out indifference. As I breathe in stillness, I breathe out busyness. As I breathe in patience, I breathe out intolerance. As I breathe in self-care, I breathe out self-neglect. As I breathe in serenity, I breathe out stress. And as I breathe in hope, I breathe out despair. Not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard in the stillness between two waves of the sea. One of the lovely things about pause, you can do it anywhere, anytime. You don't need any special equipment. Just a commitment to own your breath for 1 minute. Just 1 minute for yourself. A gift to your own self-care. And in a world that's so hell-bent on self-destruction, pause becomes a radical act of not just self-care and self-compassion, but self-love. I love spending time in nature. Anyone that knows me will know that. There's something really lovely about trees. They don't answer back. But you know, it's not just that stillness, it's that deeper sense of connection. Hearing the wind rustling through the leaves. My favourite tree is a tree that doesn't even grow in Ireland, because it's the story of what it represents. It's a tree that grows in the Sichuan district of southwestern China. A tree whose leaves are the food of the black and white pandas. The Chinese bamboo tree. The Chinese bamboo tree grows tall and strong and upright, which represents great physical health. It's resilient, agile, and tenacious, which represents a reflective, agile mind. It's got a hollow center, which represents a heart that's open, full of empathy, gratitude, and compassion. In India, the bamboo tree is a symbol of friendship, whereas in China, it's a sign of balance. It brings that sort of feng shui to the elements of fire, earth, wind, and water. So the bamboo tree is a great symbol of health and well-being. But the reason I love the Chinese bamboo tree story is because of the Chinese bamboo tree seed. Because if you get a Chinese bamboo tree seed and plant it in a sunny aspect of your garden in southwest China, and you feed the seed and water the seed and cultivate the soil around the seed each and every day for an entire year, what happens? Nothing happens. Ditto. Nada. But you don't give up on your dreams. You keep on feeding that seed and watering that seed and cultivating the soil around the seed for a second year and a third year and a fourth year. 4 long years. And still nothing happens. 1,461 days and still you don't give up on your dream. And sometime on year 5, that bamboo tree seed breaks through the ground and grows and grows and grows. 90 feet tall in 5 short weeks. Or was it 5 long years? 5 weeks or 5 years? It was 5 weeks. No, it wasn't. It was 5 years. Just checking he is still awake. It was 5 years, but for the first 4 years, the growth was underground. It was developing the foundations and root structure to support its later upward growth. See, the same can be true for us too. You need to plan, persist, and persevere. You need to believe in yourself. You need to keep working on your dreams, even when others give up on you. And don't ever give up on yourself. So my question for you is this. Are you going to live the next 5 years of your life like the last 5? And if you are, maybe that's absolutely A1. But what I want you to think about is, if you live the next 5 years like the last 5 years, what health are you going to have in 5 years' time? What kind of relationships are you going to have in 5 years' time? What kind of development are you going to undergo over the next 5 years? Remember this lady called Mary came to see me a few years ago. She was working in Dublin. She had a big job in a global company. And there'd been big restructuring. It happens, and she'd lost her job. She was made redundant. And she was sitting in front of me, tears in her eyes. And she said, I don't know how I ended up there. But, I was the eldest of 5 children. My dad died when I was still at school. I never got a chance to go to college. I started working at the age of 16. I got a job in a factory. One thing led to the next. And I ended up with this big job. I never wanted to be in HR. And I said to Mary, what did you want to do? She said, I wanted to do law. I always wanted to fight injustice in the world. I always wanted to work with the downtrodden, people who couldn't advocate for themselves. And I said, Mary, you're only 50. Why don't you go back and do law now? And she just laughed at me and she said, Mark, are you absolutely crazy? Do you know how long that would take? I mean, I'd need to go back and get a law degree first, then I'd need to do all these extra exams. I mean, it would take me at least 5 years. And I looked at her and I said, what age are you going to be in 5 years' time if you don't go back to study law? One of the most interesting things I've ever read in the area of health and well-being that's always stuck with me is that the main regret that 90-year-olds have, and I'm not saying they have many, but the main regret they have is they didn't realize just how young they still were when they were 65. Mary did go back and study law, and today she's a successful barrister. So this is my question for you. What's the Chinese bamboo tree seed you could plant today that if you had the courage and the self-belief to work on it for even 15 minutes a day, every day for the next 5 years, could turn into the most incredible Chinese bamboo tree of your future self. Something to think about. You know, Celtic tradition loved the circle. I love that symbol of the circle too. The idea that every ending has a new beginning. The idea that everything is so interconnected. When it comes to our health, mind, body, emotion, spirit, purpose, all interconnected elements of our well-being, underpinned not just by purpose, but by the environments we spend our time in. And those environments can be health enhancing or health depleting. I was only reading there the other day that choosing to spend 45 minutes in the arts once a month can add 10 years to your life. Whether you write poetry or whether you go to the theatre or even come to things like this tonight. It's incredible. A health-enhancing environment, nurturing your creative side. So I love this idea of the circle. And it reminds me of the seasons. You know, every year, spring, summer, autumn, winter. And life is just like the seasons. You can't say, I'm going to have 3 springs, 2 summers, 1 glorious autumn, but no winters. I don't do winters. Life isn't like that. We can't change the seasons in our life, but we can change how we respond. You can change your direction today and influence your destiny. You can change your habits today and influence your health. That's your potential. Now, spring, of course, the youngest season. Spring is when you say goodbye to the darkness of winter and hello to the lightness of spring. Spring is really all about vibrancy and vitality, youth and energy. The vision of spring is courage, commitment, and continuous action. Every day we can have spring in our lives. Spring in our relationships. Spring in our conversations. Spring in our health. Spring provides the opportunity, but we must plant the seeds in springtime. Spring doesn't really care if we plant the seeds or not. That's up to us. And you have to make the most of the opportunities because before you know it, it's summertime. And life's a breeze in summertime. Everything's going so well in summertime. Sun's at your back. Not a care in the world. Summer's a time to not get complacent. Summer's a time to stay true to your values. Don't worry about the thief in the alley that's after your purse. Remember the thief in your mind that's after your promise. Summer is a time for gratitude, to appreciate all the people in your life, to appreciate how good you have it. Because gratitude brings perspective to the past, peace to the present moment, and a profound sense of hope for the future. And before you know it, it's autumn. Autumn is a season of great beauty and also a season of decline. Autumn is a time to remind yourself that you are responsible for the choices you make, that you are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. And then it's winter. Winter is a time when there's a great clearing away, a time to remember what's important, to see things through new eyes. Winter is a time to remember that you may encounter many defeats in your life, but you will not be defeated. Winter can grab you in a vice-like grip, not just the cold and the rain, the hailstones, but the winters we can experience in our careers or in our health. We can't change the winters, but we can learn from them. We can learn to become wiser, stronger, and better. And before we know it, spring comes again. In the words of T.S. Eliot, in his poem The Gidding, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the very first time. And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, when the tongues of flame are infolded into the crowned knot of fire, and the fire and rose become one. And that's my hope for you too. That you face the fires in your life with courage, conviction, and compassion. That they do become sparks of opportunity for you to grow, to become wiser, stronger, and better. That you never stop starting. That your fire and rose become one. That you become the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. And I just want to end with a little poem that I wrote a few years ago in the Mount Congreve Gardens to wish you all well and every good wish in your well-being journey ahead. And this poem is called Soul Breath. May the breath of your soul be your wisdom guide. May the beacon of your soul bring respite inside. May you bring presence to all that you do. May care and compassion be that which is you. May you have the gift of wisdom and staying awake. May each dawn bring you presence, not to forsake. Dusk find you grateful for the helter-skelter. May night bring security, serenity of shelter. As day turns to night and month turns to year, may the passing of time bring you less fear. Each day you toil, as life's steps take their toll, may loveliness and light bring breath to your soul. Thank you all very much.
Time waits for nobody.